2. There is a deplorable tendency among many people to wait for a particularly favorable opportunity to declare themselves in the battle of life. Some people pause for the rap of opportunity when opportunity has been playing a tattoo on their resonant skulls for years. Hardly a single great invention has been placed on the market without a number of men putting forth the claim that they had the idea first. And in most cases they proved the fact. But while they were sitting down and dreaming, or trying to bring the device to a greater perfection, a man with initiative rose up and acted. The telegraph, telephone, sewing machine, air brake, mowing machine, wireless, and linotype machine are only a few illustrations. The most wonderful idea is quite valueless until it is put into practical operation. The government rewards the man who first gets a patent or first puts his invention into practical use, and the world does likewise. Thus the dreamer must always lag behind the door. True willpower also predicates concentration. I shall never forget the time I went to see President Lincoln to ask him to spare the life of one of my soldiers who were sentenced to be shot. As I walked toward the door of his office, I felt a greater fear than I had ever known when the shells were bursting all about us at Antietam. Finally, I mustered up courage to knock on the door. I heard a voice inside yell, "Come in and sit down!" The man at the table did not look up as I entered. He was busy over a bunch of papers. I sat down at the edge of a chair and wished I were in Peking or Patagonia. He never looked up until he had quite finished with the papers. Then he turned to me and said, "I am a very busy man, and have only a few minutes to spare. Tell me in the fewest words what it is you want." As soon as I mentioned the case, he said, "I have heard all about it, and you do not need to tell me any more. Mr. Stanton was talking to me about that only a few days ago. You can go to the hotel and rest assured that the president never did sign an order to shoot a boy under 20 and never will. You may tell his mother that." Then, after a short conversation, he took hold of another bunch of papers and said decidedly, "Good morning." Lincoln, one of the greatest men of the world, owed his success largely to one rule. Whatsoever he had to do at all, he put his whole mind into, and held it all there until the task was all done. That makes men great almost anywhere. Too many people are satisfied if they have done a thing well enough. That is a fatal complacency. Well enough has cursed souls. Well enough has wrecked enterprises. Well enough has destroyed nations. If perfection in a task can possibly be reached, nothing short of perfection is well enough. Governor Talbot of Massachusetts got his high office because General Swift made a happy application of the truth in saying to the convention, "I nominate for governor of this state a man who, when he was a farmer's boy, hoed to the end of the row." That saying became a campaign slogan all up and down the state. "He hoed to the end of the row! He hoed to the end of the row!" When the people discovered that this was one of the characteristics of the man, they elected him by one of the greatest majorities ever given a governor in Massachusetts. Yet we must bear in mind that there is such a thing as overdoing anything. Young people should draw a line between study that secures wisdom and study that breaks down the mind, between exercise that is healthful and exercise that is injurious, between a conscientiousness that is pure and divine and a conscientiousness that is over-morbid and insane, between economy that is careful and economy that is stingy, between industry that is a reasonable use of their powers and industry that is an overuse of their powers leading only to destruction. The best-ordered mind is one that can grasp the problems that gather around a man constantly and work them out to a logical conclusion. That sees quickly what anything means, whether it be an exhibition of goods, a juxtaposition of events, or the suggestions of literature. A man is made up largely of his daily observations. School training serves to fit and discipline him, so that he may read rightly the lesson of the things he sees around him. Men have made mighty fortunes by just using their eyes. Several years ago, I took dinner in New York with one of the great millionaires of that city. In the course of our talk, he told me something about his boyhood days, how, with hardly a penny in his pocket, he slung a pack on his back and set out along the Erie Canal, looking for a job. At last he got one. He was paid $3 a week to make soft soap for the laborers to use at the locks and washing their hands. One can hardly imagine a more humble occupation, but this boy kept his eyes open. He saw the disadvantages of soft soap and set to work to make a hard substitute for it. Finally, he succeeded, and his success brought him many, many millions. Every person is designed for a definite work in life, fitted for a particular sphere. Before God, he has a right to that sphere. If you are an excellent housekeeper, you should not be running a loom, and it is your duty to prepare yourself to enter at the first opportunity the sphere for which you are fitted. George W. Childs, who owned the Philadelphia Ledger, once blacked boots and sold newspapers in front of the Ledger building. He told me how he used to look at that building and declare over and over to himself that some day he would own the greatest newspaper establishment that it housed. When he mentioned his ambitions to his associates, they laughed at him. But Childs had indomitable grit, and ultimately he did come to own that newspaper establishment, one of the finest in the country. Another thing very necessary to the pursuit of success is the proper employment of waiting moments. How do you use your waiting time for meals, for trains, for business? I suppose that if the average individual were to employ wisely these intervals in which he whistles and twiddles his thumbs, he would soon accumulate enough knowledge to quite make over his life. I went through the United States Senate in 1867 and asked each of the members how he got his early education. I found that an extremely large percentage of them had simply properly applied their waiting moments. Even Charles Sumner, a university graduate, told me that he learned more from the books he read outside of college than from those he had studied within. General Burnside, who was then a senator, said that he had always had a book beside him in the shop where he worked. Before leaving the subject of the power of the will, there is one thing I would like to say. A true will must have a decent regard for the happiness of others. Do not get so wrapped up in your own mission that you forget to be kind to other people, for you have not fulfilled every duty unless you have fulfilled the duty of being pleasant. Enemies and ignorance are the two most expensive things in a man's life. I never make unnecessary enemies. They cost too much. Everyone has within himself the tools necessary to carve out success. Consecrate yourself to some definite mission in life, and let it be a mission that will benefit the world as well as yourself. Remember that nothing can withstand the sweep of a determined will, unless it happens to be another will equally as determined. Keep clean, fight hard, pick your openings judiciously, and have your eyes forever fixed on the heights toward which you are headed. If there be any other formula for success, I do not know it. The biography of that great patriot,